Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Boss Economics World, where we break down the big, clumsy moves of the government and financial elites in ways that make sense to everyday folks like you and me while also offering a bit of sarcasm on the side. Because, really, how else can we deal with the absurdity of today's economic landscape? Today, let's talk Trump, trade wars, and tariffs. Yes, folks, they're back on the menu. But if you think we're in for a little déjà vu from 2017, you aren't ready for Trump's latest plan to upend trade as we know it. He's doubled down and, surprise, surprise, taken it to new heights with a proposition that has economists scratching their heads, politicians yelling at each other, and global markets shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Buckle up, because this time, Trump's pushing tariffs to levels that haven't been seen since the early 20th century. Yeah, we're talking about the pre-World War II era here. Donald Trump is promising to, once again, put import taxes, that's tariffs for you experts taking notes, back at the very center of U.S. economic policy during his second term. Remember 2017-2021? That was just the warm-up act. If you thought 25% on specific categories of Chinese imports was bad, get ready for an across-the-board smackdown, a whopping 60% on Chinese goods, and a more modest, sarcasm intended, 20% on imports from practically everyone else. Now, let's be clear on just how radical this is. According to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, the trade-weighted average tariff rate in the U.S. today sits at about 2% for industrial goods imports, which make up the bulk, 94% by value, of U.S. merchandise imports. About half of those industrial goods currently enter the U.S. duty-free. What Trump's proposing is bringing back protectionist policies we haven't seen since, well, practically forever in modern economic terms. Think Smoot-Hawley, but on steroids. More on that disaster in a minute. This history lesson is just getting started. Now, for our everyday viewers who might be thinking, okay, but how do tariffs actually affect me and my wallet? Here's the deal. Tariffs are a tax, plain and simple. If you're into the whole idea of buying American, cool, but if you expect Walmart or Target to keep selling cheap imported goods from China, Latin America, or pretty much anywhere overseas, think again. They're going to raise prices. You, the consumer, end up paying the price. That's the part Trump really doesn't emphasize, does he? It's not foreign exporters shelling out the big bucks. For the most part, foreign manufacturers aren't eating the costs when these tariffs hit. Nope, it's passed down to the person at the end of the transaction, you. You know how the old saying goes, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And boy, are we gearing up for a repeat performance of the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, which was intended to protect American farmers but quickly evolved into an across-the-board tax on about 20,000 imports. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The result? A global trade war, retaliatory tariffs left and right, and a worldwide drop in trade that aggravated the Great Depression. You'd think we'd have that one chalked up under things not to do, but old habits die hard. Fast forward nearly a century, and instead of learning, we're back at it, tariffs, retaliations, and trade disruptions. Here's how this could pan out: other countries won't just sit back and let America tax the hell out of their products. You see, trade wars tend to escalate quickly. Europe isn't too pleased with Trump's latest remarks, neither is China, no big shock there, and guess who just dropped their currencies in response? The Mexican peso and the Canadian dollar took a nosedive after Trump threw in extra threats of imposing massive tariffs should those countries not combat illegal migration and drug shipments to his preference. No competition, no negotiation. Typical, right? All or nothing. But where things get really wild is the long-term ripple effects we're just beginning to see. Manufacturers might, theoretically, relocate to dodge tariffs, but that takes money, years, and adds uncertainty. More likely, they'll just pass these costs to American buyers, contorting supply chains in ways that could take decades to fix, or worse, never correct. Food prices up. Check. Consumer electronics prices up. Check. Manufacturing jobs. Hold your applause. It's hard to tell if Americans will see any noticeable reinvestment or if it'll just hit our wallets worse and worse. But why would Trump even bother to throw out these tariff proposals again, knowing all this? Simple, political theater. This is a populist move that sounds great on the campaign trail. It promises to bring back American jobs, punish economic rivals, namely China, and fatten the treasury with increased tax revenue without any need for complicated legislation or, heaven forbid, a thorough analysis of domestic impacts. During his 2024 campaign speeches, Trump has harped on two things. First, that these new tariffs will supposedly bring in billions of dollars in revenues. And second, that by making imports more expensive, companies will shift production back to the U.S. But here's the reality: economists have already sized up this rhetoric, and to put it mildly, it's far more fantasy than anything based in fact. For starters, back in 2019, the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco estimated that tariffs were adding 0.1 percentage points to consumer price inflation. And that was when the tariff situation was barely escalating, nothing like the full tariff bombs the second-round Trump administration wants to drop. And in an economy still reeling from the fallout of COVID-19 supply chain issues, it's not like restarting American heavy manufacturing is the silver bullet here. Sure, some factories might come home, but to expect this wholesale reshoring of production feels like more wishful thinking than grounded economic planning. Let's break down what really happens with these tariff hikes. The Tax Foundation ran the numbers back when Trump was first slapping tariffs left and right. At that point, the new tariffs were projected to cost 142,000 jobs, that's a lot of people out of work. And if you're thinking all tariffs are equal, think again. Certain industries will benefit, sure, but others are going to get slaughtered in the process. Any sector reliant on imported materials, think electronics, automobiles, etc., it's not going to magically resurrect US suppliers overnight. They'll face increased costs, inefficiencies, and guess what? Those losses get passed right on to you. Let's not forget the damage that tariffs do slowly, over time. Tariffs incentivize companies to avoid investment in free trade relationships that could build wealth. They also tend to trigger retaliatory tariffs, and that can crush a lot of smaller, export-reliant American businesses. Restrictive tariffs cut off international markets, isolating the US from the global trading system we've worked decades to build. Remember, America is no longer the only game in town, it's competing with China, Germany, South Korea, and a host of others, all forming growing trade networks. Worst of all, US households end up paying higher prices as a hidden sales tax effectively. Erica York, a senior economist at the Tax Foundation, pointed out back in 2019 that Trump's tariffs would increase annual costs for American households by $625. And keep in mind, that was based on data before Trump's more extreme second-term proposals. We might be talking $1,000 plus per household at this rate, all for, what? Oh, and remember that lovely inflation equation we mentioned earlier? Yeah, tariffs are about the most inefficient tool you can use when trying to attack a recession or inflation. It's a simple math problem, raising taxes, which is what systematic tariffs are, shrinks the economy. It suppresses consumer spending. It costs Americans their jobs. How's that for pro-growth? Alright, rant mode off. Let's bring it back. What should we be doing if Trump's plan is a non-starter? The truth is, while Trump's fiery rhetoric makes for an entertaining speech, tariff wars and protectionism don't work in a highly interconnected global economy. The bigger picture. If you really want to strengthen America's economy, you don't slap high taxes on every import coming through the border. Instead, it's time to address the structural issues at home, investing in technology, R&D, education, and creating high-skilled labor. Think about it. Rather than trying to strangle the global trade system to squeeze out slightly better terms, why not keep pace with global competition through cutting-edge innovation and building a stronger workforce? The rise of China in the global economy, rather than an infrastructure failure, signals the need for the US to take global trade more seriously, not isolate itself from it. Additionally, these tariff wars eliminate the possibility of meaningful diplomatic trade renegotiation in good faith. Working within international rules, like WTO guidelines, to improve transparency and cooperation should be a top priority, not closing borders with an every nation for itself mentality. Because, last I checked, Congress likes revenue but hates angry voters cut off from affordable products even more. We could always fix the tax code, incentivize homegrown manufacturing, and, perish the thought, encourage smart international investments. But those are long-term strategies. And as we know from the current populist outbreak on both political sides, no one seems to care about the long term anymore. In conclusion, Trump's latest tariff-heavy trade proposals aren't just a rerun of his 2017-2021 policies, they represent an extreme throwback to a pre-modern global trade era that we have wisely left behind. Hello again, Smoot-Hawley. If implemented, tariffs this steep would disrupt business, escalate trade wars with major allies and adversaries alike, and saddle ordinary Americans with the ultimate economic tab, all for the sake of political gain. The harsh reality is that continued tariff escalations today will create a lose-lose scenario for everyone. For those in favor of economic isolationism, it might sound like a bold, independent move. But don't be fooled, we live in a global economy, and the fallout from these policies will be felt far wider and far harsher than anyone anticipates. You heard it here on Boss Economics World, where we say it straight, cut through the propaganda, and let you in on the facts that the politicians and elites won't dare touch. Could 2025 be the year of economic common sense? Maybe. Just stop slapping tariffs on everything and build for the real challenges of tomorrow. Until next time, stay sharp, stay informed, and stay cynical, because someone's got to spot the scams in all this economic chaos.